Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Lookout. Today is the 17th of September, and we're reporting on the Anvil Fire on the Oregon coast, and also checking in on fires in northwestern California near Gasky, Orleans, and Happy Camp on the Six Rivers and Klamath National Forests. Good to have you with us. We're going to kind of jump right in this morning. Normal introduction. I do wildfire intel and mapping, have been for about 25 years, and this is all public information that we package and present to you as part of the Lookout Project. And the goal of the Lookout Project is to improve America's wildfire literacy. So we talk about how fires get fought and what they're doing and what you can do to get on better terms with wildfire. So gonna jump right in here. Just got stung by a yellow jacket on a walk this morning, so it's kind of bothering me. Itchy, so might interfere a little with my computer driving. All right, gonna jump in here to the map right off the bat. We're gonna go to the Anvil Fire. All right, so here you got Port Orford. And here in the green is the Grassy Knob Wilderness, and the fire is doing its best to burn the entire wilderness. Looks like it's likely it will. So we're just going to kind of look at what's new on this fire. You can check our videos from the last couple of days if you want to kind of background on how these fires are behaving. I started covering this fire kind of late, but there was an interesting story early on in this fire where rolling material, they flew in. It took a while for them to make access. They got some repellers on here. Then they had rolling material. A rock broke a guy's leg. They had a kind of intense episode trying to medevac him, fire escape control. And here we are about 20 days later, and it's doing what it's it's kind of doing what it wants. Anyway, what's new on this fire, white line is yesterday's perimeter, yesterday mornings, and the orange, bright orange is intense heat. Yellow is kind of areas that have burned already and are cooling off. So we've got some spread, minor spread kind of in all directions on the fire, just a little bit of kind of slope-driven runs. And down here, kind of near Grassy Knob itself, there's some line outside the wilderness boundary, dozer line that then turns into hand line, and you can see that there's they're putting some fire on the ground on that line. So the plan there is going to be to bring firing down this line to kind of broaden that fire line and secure it. So that's what I'd expect. If they have favorable conditions over the next couple of days, I'd expect that we'll see this line will get fired, and barring bad weather or other mishaps, it's likely that they'll hold it at this line. One thing we've been seeing on other fires in this area since the rains is that it's kind of been hard in some places for them to get their fire into carry very well, but you can see this fire is moving kind of on all flanks pretty well. It's over the past couple of weeks, it's dried out a lot, and it's gotten easier to put fire back on the ground. But that's kind of one thing we talked about. You can go back and look at some of our other recent videos just about firing operations, how we use them to control fires. Anyway, that looks like the initial plan here is from the hatchery up, hand line and dozer line on this ridge to fire this and secure that edge there. Above Grassy Knob, they've prepped the road, the Grassy Knob Road, and they've got dozer line and hand line tied together along the north edge of the wilderness. So as we said yesterday, it's likely that the fire will probably burn out to the edge of the wilderness and the Grassy Knob Road. Looking at the forecast for today, the fire behavior analyst on this fire is saying, hey, we're kind of in peak burning for the year, peak conditions as far as dryness and everything else goes. We got low humidities on the mid slopes and ridges tonight. It's cooler today. There's a bit of a northwest flow, but there's a red flag warning for tonight for the gusty winds from the northwest of 15 to 25 miles an hour. Gusty northeast winds. So they also say that there's kind of radically different winds in the sheltered areas than up on the ridges. And so, likely that those higher winds are going to be hitting areas here that have already burned. And so this area is fairly sheltered from the northeast. We're looking northeast here, and you can see that we're kind of tucked down in here. So that'll make a difference. The burn period here, we talk about the kind of period of the day where you can actually have active burning. And burn period is pretty much from 2 p.m. to about 6 p.m. And sometimes it's shorter if there's an inversion and that kind of coastal marine layer sits in. We'll talk about that in a minute on the Klamath fires. This short burning period is really a feature of the fall. And as we go into shorter days, the burning period gets shorter and shorter. So that just means that the active time of day where fire will actually carry gets shorter and shorter. We might have a burning period from, 1 p.m. till 8 p.m. in July when the days are long and it's super hot. And so the fire can move a lot more in those 7 hours than it can move in these 4 hours when, maybe 1 hour on either end of that 2 to 6 is not ideal. Pretty much we start to see as soon as the sun starts to go down and you start to get into shade, fire behavior tends to moderate a lot. So we talk a lot about that kind of the concept of kind of active burning period and how it kind of defines how far a fire can spread in a given amount of time. Anyway, that's about all we have to report on Anvil. As we said yesterday, these pink lines are kind of planned lines, contingency, or right now the primary plan is for them to hold it on Elk River or the Elk River Road. There's not a lot of firefighters on the east side of this fire, and the plan seems to be that they're going to let it burn out to the east, at least as long as it's in the wilderness, unless the weather changes and it gets rained on and it just lays down. But right now, as far as looking at the ops maps and their resource plan, there's not a lot of. It doesn't look like there's a lot of planned firefighting out here on this north flank of the fire. It's also fairly minimally staffed. I think because they finished the dozer line, they've only got one crew and one module, so 30 firefighters on this kind of northeast flank of the fire. One engine, a couple masticators, which are like brush mowing machines. Interesting thing about these fires that we've seen, really in the last 15 years, they've got 7 medics assigned to this division on the northeast flank because it's remote. Could have long extraction times, especially if we're smoked in. That's what we see when we talk about the inversion not lifting till the afternoon. Oftentimes we can't fly helicopters out of, especially if they're based in valleys that are smoked in. And so in 2008, we had a fatality fire here on the Shasta Trinity in Northern California. And one of the primary reasons that the guy died was because we couldn't get a medevac for hours. And so there's been this awareness of the time it takes to extract an injured firefighter. And that's a real consideration in how we operate now. And so also one thing we've seen is kind of embedding of these medic units with line firefighters working in the more remote areas. So 7 medics, 30 firefighters. Not a lot of use for an engine out here just because there's not a lot of roads. Most of the firefighting horsepower right now is concentrated on this Elk River Road corridor, both for structure protection and to make sure that they can hold the fire here. As you can see, yesterday to today, there's very minor spread along Elk River in this section that it hit the day before. It's actively burning down to the road out here on the kind of southeasterly corner. And then out here, it's got a long ways to go to burn back down to the road. But we like to see this, cooling off, not spreading, where it's come kind of down into the riparian area. So that's the strategy there, is they're fighting the fire. As we've said, these fires get fought when they get to a spot you can make access. If you don't have access anyway, we often see that they'll burn to a river, they'll burn to a road system where we have access. I saw on the ops map this morning, let's see, there's some plans to prep roads out here and dozer line, kind of to the west of China Mountain, as contingency, just in case it does cross Elk River and Elk River Road. None of that looks like it's been completed yet on yesterday's ops map. There is, they're showing completed hand and dozer line up this north side of the fire and tying into the Grassy Knob Road. And then, as we said before, prepped roads, planned hand line, and planned dozer line on the north edge of the wilderness and up on these private lands. And what are these? Sorry, I gotta look at the legend. Coquille lands are in kind of pink. So let's see, that's flat for you. So we're gonna come down here to check out the infrared from last night for the Gasky Six Rivers Complex fire. White are areas that they couldn't fly or couldn't see very well last night with infrared because of clouds. There was some action on the webcam, the Wild Frontier webcam last night down here on the kind of western edge of the fire, and the infrared didn't really pick up any new spread. It was kind of like interior burning. Oftentimes stuff smolders or gets lit and doesn't really do anything, and then days or weeks later when the weather does flare up or dry out, we'll see kind of reburn or areas of the interior that hadn't burned yet filling in. And so it looks like that was what was happening last night on that kind of action we could see on the Wild Frontier camera. Yesterday's perimeter is in white, and so where you see the red line and no white, it just means there's been no new spread. So kind of the big action yesterday afternoon, could see it a little bit on the webcams, was the Blue 2 fire here. So just for kind of regional context, we're down here kind of between the town of Orleans and Crescent City near Wichipec. This is kind of way out there, California. Here's the Hooper Reservation and Willow Creek. So we've been following these fires here on the Six Rivers, and Blue 2 hasn't really been fought from the get-go, and it's making, it's burning quite intensely. It grew maybe 2,000 acres yesterday. This fire is burning in a 2008 burn scar. And then there's other overlapping fire history out in here. But we're seeing this bright red areas. These are areas of growth from yesterday. That white line is yesterday's perimeter. So we see, 500 to 1,000 acre burn here, here, and here. There has been some work done outside the wilderness prepping roads, but there's really been no direct firefighting on this wilderness fire from the start. So, after the rains, the fire behavior analyst said it would take a couple of weeks to dry out and really get going again, and now that's happened. And so even though the kind of east winds have died out here, it's still dry, still getting a pretty active burn period of at least 4 hours. And you can see that on the satellite from yesterday. So we can see kind of starting in the morning, kind of disorganized, not a lot of smoke, not a lot of ventilation, or, not a lot of active fire is what I mean to say. You can see the smoke sits in there, and then it starts to lift out, and then you see a couple hours of active burning here on these fires before they get kind of smothered by this big kind of thunderstorm that was coming through. So there was some moisture showing up on the satellite or on the radar around Orleans, but unclear how much of that actually got to these active fires. When we look at the infrared loop from the same time, you can see kind of intense little flare up here for a couple hours on those fires, and not much else going on. You don't really see any heat up here on the Smith River complex. You see everything else is kind of under those clouds. You don't even really see much heat up here on the Anvil Fire. So like we said, not much firefighting going on that, except indirect lines out ahead of it. No new spread really that's mapped on the Elliot Fire here on the Happy Camp complex or UFish. UFish has kind of just been backing out to a perimeter that was kind of established by firing over the last 3 weeks or more. No new real heat across where they were worried about it on the Titus Creek. Okay, coming down to the Pearch Fire outside Orleans. A little bit of new spread here where the fire's backing down to the north of Pearch Creek. This is the perimeter from the day before. And then the fire's been this is some of the most active fire behavior we've seen on the north flank, backing down towards Soames Bar. This growth along here. Kind of about what we've been seeing down towards Butler. The fire is getting close to Butler Flat now. We've been watching it for the last 10 days. slowly move its way down about this much every day. So go time for these folks. As far as folks out here have got a lot of experience dealing with fire, and curious what they're up to today, but it's moving their way. That's Perch. So the last thing we're going to jump over here and look at is the SRF fires, the Mosquito and Bluff 1 fires. These fires have had, from the get-go, kind of a strategy of herding them along roads, burning out ahead of them, trying to minimize intense fire effects and maximize the ecological benefits of backing fire. So this road system here has been fired for days. I mean, this whole thing, there's been firing along the perimeters for weeks. And even with this kind of intense drying we've seen, like there was some firing that got done here over the past couple of days. And you see that here kind of out of the wind, that this firing is barely spreading. You know, a lot of the stuff, they lit it using drones, and then they stopped lighting and it's going out basically. So this was lit maybe 3 days ago, and you know, it's just, there's some residual heat there, but it's not even spreading by itself. So tells you something about the burning conditions out there. Is just that, you know, they're putting a lot of heat to the ground, and they're having to do that. They're having to sustain putting heat on the ground in a lot of these places to get the fire to spread. Decent run here, likely aided along with aerial ignitions, drone ignitions, but I don't have great intel on this part of the fire. But the strategy of these from the get-go has been to kind of contain them within a box, using firing along the ridges to maximize the amount of backing fire. Don't really want the fire to be established down here, come ripping out of here, so they'd rather light the ridges and let it back down in. So as we mentioned yesterday, we were looking at the imagery of, here we go, satellite imagery to look at the severity. And what we mentioned before is just that strategy seems to have been working pretty well, in that the severity that we see in these areas that were burned when they flew this image 4 days ago, a lot of backing fire in here, and the only places we were really seeing a lot of high severity generally out here were in places where there was already kind of a lot of brush before the fire. And that the areas with taller trees have been getting backing fire out of these ignitions. So that kind of wraps up what we got going on these fires. And I'm going to go ice my swelling hand. Thank you all. Appreciate the support. We'll keep doing these as long as there's action. I'm going to be on the road next week for work, so these are either going to be shorter, or we're just going to do stuff on Twitter. So you can also check out our Twitter. It's wildland_ZKO. Not as active on Facebook. So, but yeah, if we got some stuff happening, updates to share with you, we'll put them up on the Twitter. I'm not going to call it X because that's stupid. All right. Matt Schaefer says, got to see some of the flare-ups in the ONP this weekend. What's ONP, Matt Schaefer? All right, we'll throw your answer in the comments. I'm going to bail out. Thank you all.